In today's episode of the podcast, and all this week, in fact, I am introducing you to the idea of Youier goal setting. I am your host, Elle Edwards. I'm founder of the Faith and Business Playground, and I'm here with training, coaching, and this podcast to help you embrace your inner weirdo, to help you be Youier, so you can make Jesus CEO of your life and business. And I should, at this point, as long as you're listening along live or relatively live, I want to give you a little bit of advance notice about a really fun thing we're going to be doing on the podcast next week. We're going to be doing what I'm calling Reclaim Your Year Live. So my goal this week in the podcast is to inspire you to go, oh, actually, do you know what? I'm going to give this goal setting another go, because at the time of releasing this episode, it is May. And it's that time of year where January was far enough ago that we're like, oh, okay, I had all these things I wanted to do and maybe I didn't do them yet. And oh, it's going to be Christmas again before we know it. No, okay, we're not even quite halfway through this year yet. And so we're going to work together and help make the second half of 2019 amazing. If you've already had an amazing first half of 2019, fantastic. Let's make the second half equally as brilliant. But I'm particularly interested in reaching out to those people who've had a fairly decent first half of the year, but you're feeling a bit like, okay, there's some stuff that I really is niggling at me and I haven't quite done it yet. And I'd like to maybe make progress on this stuff. If that's you, next week on the podcast, I have a special extravaganza, especially for you. Like I say, it's called Reclaim Your Year Live. It is going to be based on the system, and I'm using that word system loosely. It's a loose fitting system because my thing, as you will have gathered by now, is about honoring the person that God created you to be. So it's a flexible system that will help you set goals that you actually want to get done. So it's based on my little book, but we're going to be going through it together live here on the podcast, and then also working through it over in the Facebook group as well. So if that sounds exciting to you, I would invite you to go to faithandbusinessplayground.com/reclaim. And I will, of course, put a link to that in the show notes. But that page, you can sign up and I can send you the link to the Facebook group. I can send you the link to download the book easily. Incidentally, if you don't want to sign up, go to Amazon and just type in Happily Ever After, Elle Edwards, and you will find it. It's free on Kindle. But I want to create a bit of a party around this. You know, fun and lightness and ease is my way of showing up in the world. And so we're going to do this together. It's going to be fun and you're going to get some input as well. So if, like I say, if that sounds something that you would get benefit from, or if you know somebody who would need that help as well, I fell over my words there with my excitement, invite them. The more, the merrier. faithandbusinessplayground.com/reclaim. But as we set out on this adventure together, like I say, my goal this week is to inspire you. And I want to start off with Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Now, some context for you. God is speaking those words to the children of Israel at a time when they are in captivity. They're at the lowest of the low. And so what I hope to remind you in this episode today is that as you think about the year thus far and what's coming up for you, along the way, if you're feeling a bit like, oh, I just don't know, I want to encourage you that God knows. And even if you're feeling really quite low about it all and you're a bit like, oh, this has been never ending, I don't see any way forward. Just imagine for a moment the place where the children of Israel were when they had that word from God via Jeremiah. Can you imagine being stuck in captivity? So they were away from their home. They were in a foreign land. And God is saying, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, hope and a future. That same hope and future and plans to prosper you, that's God's promise for you as well. Yes, it was written thousands of years ago to a different people in a different context. But the scripture is God-breathed. It's God's words to us. And the fact that it is in our scripture, there's been lots of experts over the years. I don't quite know the process of how they did it, but they had God helping them to say, yep, this bit is from me. this bit not quite so much. So we have confidence that when we read these promises in the Bible, they are promises for us too. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to take the Bible and make it relevant, dig into the context. And when we look at stories that Jesus told, for example, who was he speaking to at the time? What was the context of that story? So we can get a better understanding of what it'd be like to hear those words at the time to help us apply it to our life today. Because just reading the Bible for the sake of reading the Bible is a bit pointless, I think. Yes, there's some great stories in there. Yes, it can be really uplifting. But God doesn't want you to sit there and just read stuff. It's also about taking action as well and moving forward so that together we can light up this world with love on God's behalf. That's ultimately, as I've shared with you before, that's ultimately the why behind everything I do. I believe that we are here to love on this hurting world, and my goal is to empower and equip you, because if you are so full to the top with God's love, it will ooze out and into everybody that you come into contact with, which incidentally might not be a very pretty picture, this idea of oozing. I mean it in a nice, pretty, wonderful way. But really today, the whole purpose of today is just to hopefully encourage you and inspire you, and also maybe, encourage you to listen along for the rest of the week as well, and join in next week when we go through this process together live. Because God knows. Goal setting, if you're feeling a bit like, what's the point? Who knows? God knows. I'm going to end, and it's a slightly shorter episode than usual, but I'm going to end by repeating those words to you that God's saying right now. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Those promises are for you as much as they were for the children of Israel all those thousands of years ago. So take heart, my friend. God knows. I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, thank you for listening. And that reminder again, if you do want to join us live next week, faithandbusinessplayground.com/reclaim.